I've been carrying this weight for 57 years. 57 years of anger so deep it became part of who I was. My name is Eleanor. I'm 79 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed some wounds were meant to stay open forever. It started when I was 22, fresh out of college, with a teaching degree and dreams bigger than the small town I grew up in. I had just gotten engaged to Thomas, a kind man who worked at his father's hardware store. We were planning a simple wedding for that fall. My younger sister Catherine was supposed to be my maid of honor. We had always been close, or so I thought. She was 19 then, beautiful in a way that made people turn their heads, and she had this charm that could light up any room she walked into. 2 months before the wedding, I came home early from a teacher's conference. I had driven 3 hours through a rainstorm because they canceled the afternoon sessions. I remember being excited to surprise Thomas, maybe take him to dinner to celebrate landing my first teaching position. When I pulled up to his apartment, I saw Catherine's car parked on the street. At first, I thought maybe she was helping him with wedding preparations, picking up his suit, or something innocent like that. But when I walked up those stairs and opened that door with the key he had given me, I found them together on his couch. They weren't just sitting there talking. The look on their faces when they saw me is something I can still see clearly today, all these decades later. Catherine started crying immediately, reaching for me, saying my name over and over. Thomas just stood there, frozen, his face white as paper. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just turned around and walked out. I drove to my parents' house and told them the wedding was off. When they asked why, I said Thomas and I weren't compatible. I never told them the truth. Catherine came to the house that night, banging on my bedroom door, begging me to let her explain. I told her through the door that she was dead to me, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. The next day, I accepted a teaching position in a town 4 hours away. I packed my things and left within a week. My parents were confused and heartbroken, but I couldn't stay in that place where everyone knew me, where I would have to see their faces and pretend everything was fine. Catherine wrote me letters for years. Dozens of them. I burned every single one without opening them. My mother would call and beg me to talk to Catherine, to come home for Christmas, to let go of whatever had happened. I told her I would visit when Catherine wasn't there, and I kept that promise. I built a good life in that new town. I taught 3rd grade for 38 years. I married a wonderful man named Richard when I was 30. We had 2 daughters who gave me 4 grandchildren. Richard died 7 years ago from a heart attack, sudden and unexpected, and that loss nearly broke me. But through all of those years, through all the joy and the sorrow, the anger toward Catherine never dimmed. It was like a stone I carried in my chest, heavy and cold and permanent. My parents passed away within 2 years of each other, about 15 years ago. At their funerals, Catherine tried to approach me. Both times, I walked away before she could speak. My daughters asked me why I wouldn't talk to their aunt. I told them she had hurt me in a way they couldn't understand, and they stopped asking. After Richard died, I became more isolated. My daughters live in different states with their own busy families. I had friends from church and former colleagues, but I spent most of my time alone in the house Richard and I had shared for 40 years. The anger toward Catherine had become such a part of me that I didn't even think about it most days. It was just there, like the color of my eyes or the sound of my voice. 6 months ago, I had a fall. Nothing dramatic. Just slipped on some ice on my front steps and broke my hip. The surgery went fine, but recovery at my age is slow and painful. My daughters arranged for me to spend 2 months at a rehabilitation center. I hated every minute of it at first. I'm not good at accepting help, never have been. There was a woman there named Joan, who had the room next to mine. She was 81 and had broken her hip in a car accident. We started having breakfast together in the common room, and slowly we became friends. Joan had this way of listening that made you want to talk, really talk, not just exchange pleasantries about the weather and the terrible food. One morning, about 3 weeks into my stay, Joan didn't come to breakfast. A nurse told me she had taken a bad turn overnight and had been moved to the hospital wing. I went to visit her that afternoon. She looked so small in that bed, hooked up to machines, her breathing labored. She smiled when she saw me and patted the chair next to her bed. We talked for a while about nothing important, and then she said something that changed everything. She told me she had 3 sons, and that her middle son had stolen money from her when her husband was dying, money they needed for medical care. She said she had refused to speak to him for 12 years. 12 years of holidays without him, 12 years of not knowing her grandchildren from that son, 12 years of carrying rage around like a badge of honor. Then she looked at me with these clear blue eyes and said that 3 months ago she had called him. She said she woke up one morning and realized that the anger was eating her alive from the inside, that she had given him 12 years of her life not because of what he did, but because she chose to hold on to it. She said forgiving him didn't mean what he did was okay. It meant she was finally putting down a weight she had been carrying for too long. I sat there listening to her, and something inside me cracked open. I started crying, really crying, in a way I hadn't cried since Richard died. Joan held my hand while I told her everything about Catherine and Thomas, every detail I had locked away for 57 years. When I finished, Joan squeezed my hand and said that forgiveness wasn't about the other person deserving it. It was about me deserving peace. Joan died 2 days later. I went to her memorial service, met her 3 sons, including the one she had forgiven. He spoke about his mother with such love and gratitude, about how her forgiveness had allowed him to become a better man, about how those last 3 months with her had been the greatest gift of his life. I went home from the rehabilitation center a week after Joan's funeral. My hip was healing well, but something else had healed too, or at least started to. I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about all those years of anger, about what it had cost me. I thought about my daughters not knowing their aunt, about holidays spent avoiding family gatherings, about Catherine's letters burning in my fireplace. I called my daughter Emily and asked her if she had any way to contact Catherine. Emily was quiet for a long moment, and then she said yes, that she and her sister had secretly stayed in touch with Catherine over the years. She gave me a phone number. It took me 3 days to make the call. When Catherine answered, I almost hung up. Her voice sounded older, but I knew it instantly. I said her name, just Catherine, and she started crying. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about her life, about the guilt she had carried, about how she had never married because she felt she didn't deserve happiness after what she had done. She told me that Thomas had left town a year after I did, and she had never seen him again. I didn't tell her I forgave her during that first call. I couldn't yet, but I told her I wanted to try to talk, to see if we could find our way back to something. She said she would wait as long as it took, that she had been waiting for 57 years already. We've talked on the phone every week since then. Last month, she came to visit me. When she walked up my front steps, I saw an old woman with white hair and a face marked by time and sadness. I saw my little sister, We stood there on my porch looking at each other, and then I opened my arms and she walked into them, and we both cried like we were 22 and 19 again. I won't tell you that everything is perfect now, that 57 years of anger just disappeared. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes I remember that moment of walking through Thomas's door and the anger flares up again. But then I remember Joan in that hospital bed, remember her telling me that I deserved peace, and I choose to let it go again. What I understand now, at 79 years old, is that forgiveness isn't one big moment. It's a choice you make over and over again, every day, sometimes every hour. It's deciding that you want your remaining years to be about love instead of anger, about connection instead of isolation. Catherine and I will never get back the 57 years we lost. Those years are gone, and that's a grief I have to carry. But we can have whatever time is left, and that matters more than I ever imagined it would. If you're holding on to anger toward someone, if you've been carrying that weight for years or even decades, I want you to know something. That anger isn't protecting you. It's not keeping you safe or proving a point. It's just taking up space where love and peace could be. The person who hurt you might not deserve your forgiveness. They probably don't, but you deserve to be free. You deserve to put down that weight and see what your life feels like without it.
I think about Joan often, about how grateful I am that I met her in those last weeks of her life. She gave me permission to let go, to choose peace over being right. I'm trying to live in a way that honors that gift. Some days I do better than others, but I'm trying, and that's more than I've done in 57 years.